Thank you very much. I don't think I've ever given a talk in such a grand room as this. So, I'm not a museum person, but I'm passionate about culture and museum, and I do quite a lot of work on digital heritage in different ways. So this morning I'm going to talk about learning styles, as Dave has said. And I got interested in this because I realized that museum websites are an excellent locus for informal learning, whether that's for school children or just members of the public who are interested in learning. And also that museum websites are facing a really difficult task of trying to be all things to all people, which must seem quite overwhelming at times. So how can we personalize information and make it appropriate for people who may be explicitly learning or may just be browsing a website, but are in effect doing informal learning? And one concept that's been around in psychology and educational psychology for quite some time is the idea of learning styles. And that's been applied both in formal education and also in informal learning. And I wondered whether this was a concept that could help museum web developers personalize their content to suit the needs of different kinds of users, both the organization of the website and also the content of the website. Now, if you know about learning styles, you can have a 2-minute cat nap, but if you're not familiar with learning styles, I just want to introduce them very, very quickly. There are many, many models of learning styles, and in educational psychology, this is a somewhat controversial topic, so I tread rather carefully here. But I feel as a user of museum websites and as a learner, and actually as a psychologist myself, there is an important and meaningful core of detail here, and we can let the academic psychologists have lots of debates about the particularities. And I think most people are aware that they may not think of it as a learning style, but if you ask people, they will say, oh yes, I'm a very visual thinker. I think in diagrams. They may even say, I learn better from diagrams. Other people say, I learn better from text, or I learn better from doing things rather than just reading about things. And all those reflect different people's different learning styles. So for our research, we've used what's known as the Felder Salone learning style model. We chose that after reviewing a very large number of models, and two of the reasons that we chose it were that we think it captures some of the important distinctions that are common across many learning style models, and most importantly, there is a free and easily available questionnaire that you can do. If you want to find out your learning style, I can give you the link and you can go and do it this afternoon, and you get back an explanation of your learning style and the different dimensions. Of course, questionnaires are not perfect, but it's a beginning, shall we say. So the Felder Salone learning style gives you a score on 4 dimensions. How visual or how verbal you are, I think everyone understands that. I, for example, am a very visual person. I mentioned this in a lecture to my students recently, and I'm very charmed that some of my students are now bringing me diagrams because they say, Helen, we know you're a very visual learner, so we've brought you a diagram to look at. The next dimension is global versus sequential. And again, I think that's pretty easy to understand. Are you a top-down person who likes to see the whole picture first and then go down to detail? Or do you like to see things sequentially and then build up the big picture? So I always think of that as, are you a top-down person or a bottom-up person? A bit more abstract is, are you a sensing person or are you an intuitive person? And I've put some text there from one of Felder's articles that explains that sensing people I think of as kind of starting from the facts. They like concrete things, whereas intuitive people like to start from something more abstract. They like possibilities and relationships. And sensing people are more problem solving, as Dave mentioned, in a museum about physics, you want to give children the chance to solve problems themselves. That would appeal to a sensing learner. And then the final dimension is active versus reflective. Again, I think that's fairly clear, but I put some text that active learners like to do something. They learn by doing, but other people are more reflective. I think we're more aware of active learners, but reflective learners like to mull over things and then come up with some useful insight. So they're the 4 dimensions we've been working with. Now, there are quite a lot of academic studies which have investigated web materials. I didn't find any which actually looked at museum websites, but they've looked at both formal and informal materials. And the way they've gone about it is they've created a website or different versions of a website that are going to be beneficial or appeal to different kinds of learners. So they'll create a website version that's going to appeal to verbal learners or sensing learners, and another one for visual learners, or which one did I say, sensing, intuitive learners. That's all very well for academic research, but it's no good in the real world for museum web developers or any web developers. Your museum is not going to develop 8 different versions of the website for different learning styles, and how would visitors arriving know that they may not know which learning style they have. So we wanted to take a different approach and look at a more realistic situation where you're developing a website and maybe you can have aspects which appeal to visual learners, aspects which appeal to verbal learners, but they're all going to be within one website. So we took 2 large and very varied websites, the British Museum website and the Wellcome Collection website. Now, they're both excellent websites. Nothing I'm going to say is in any way a criticism of those websites, but we looked at them from the point of view of what did those websites have that would appeal to the different types of learners. And I have to say, I now know more about malaria, and I did know quite a lot about mummies, but I now know a great deal about mummies from looking at the pages endlessly, analyzing them in terms of how they were presenting the material, what kinds of material they were presenting. And then we carefully constructed tasks that we would ask people in our study to do that would lead them to those pages and features on the pages. So we didn't want to clue them into the fact that we were looking at their learning style and how they reacted to things. We just asked them to find certain kinds of information on the website. So a typical informal learning task. You're interested in malaria, go and find this fact about malaria. And then we did a study, and I have to say it is with university students who I know are not representative of the whole population, but it's with undergraduate and postgraduate students at the University of York, because I don't have to pay them to do anything, and they have to do it for me as part of their course, and they actually enjoy it. And we did it with a lot of different classes, so in the end we had 146 students, I have to tell you, there were nearly 200 students, which meant that over 50 students failed to do what they were asked to do, so they don't get a degree. So they did tasks, they did 4 tasks on each of the 2 websites, and it was all beautifully counterbalanced, so half of them did one website first and half the other. Then we asked them a lot of questions, and I won't be able to talk about all the things we asked them about. We gave them a questionnaire about the usability of the website. We asked them about particular features that we thought would appeal to different learning styles, and we asked them their overall reaction to the website in emotional terms. How did the website make them feel? And we asked them what they most liked and disliked about the website. So lots of questions about their experience, and finally we got them to do the Felder learning style questionnaire, so we knew what learning style profile they had. So just to give you a flavor of the kind of results we have, first of all, I predicted that visual verbal would be a really important dimension, because both these websites have a lot of beautiful images, but they also have a lot of text. And some of what we did was to try and direct people to pages with a lot of images versus pages with a lot of text, pages with big images just with some text, and pages with small images. In fact, this is something of a generalization, but it was actually, I would say, the global versus sequential dimension that seemed most important. And I think that might be partly that the British Museum and the Wellcome seem to take a slightly different approach. That I would say the British Museum is a website that's more oriented at the moment to a global approach. It gives you the big picture and then you drill down. Whereas the Wellcome collection is more suited slightly to a sequential approach. It has a lot of detailed information that you need to go through. And that's not a criticism. I think it reflects the different interests of those 2 museums, but it's one of the reasons we chose the 2. So just as an example of the kind of results we have, we asked people after they'd done the 4 tasks with the website to rate a number of emotions about how they felt about their experience with the website. And there were 16 emotions, 8 of them were positive and 8 of them were negative emotions. And if you look at I don't want to drown you in boring graphs, but this is to give you an idea that this is the sequential versus global. Now I have to look at it right. On your left are the highly sequential people, and on the right are the highly global people, and there are about 20 people in each of those bars. And you can see it's not a perfect relationship, but there is a significant tendency for the global people to feel more positive about the British Museum website. That's quite a strong, significant tendency because we've got quite a lot of people. For some reason, the moderately global people somewhat buck the trend, so we'll just ignore them. However, other dimensions are also important, and in ways that are more subtle and somewhat unexpected to us. So again, this is the positive reaction. How positive did you feel about the British Museum website and your experience on the website? And on the left, we've got the highly sensing people. They were the most positive. It's not high positive emotional reaction, but it's looking at a website. It's not a lifetime breaking experience, so we didn't expect very strong positive emotions. But again, this is a significant trend, but it's a significant curved trend. So the strongly sensitive and the strongly intuiting people are both more positive, and the people who are balanced in the middle are significantly less positive. So it seems that there are things on the British Museum website that are appealing to both ends of that particular dimension. And just to finish with one of the specific features, we looked at a lot of specific features, and I can give you more information about this if you're interested. But one of the features we looked at was, do people, and in fact I'm interested in this across all learning styles, but do people prefer to navigate with a text menu at the top of the page or down the side of the page, or do they prefer to navigate through links in the page? And particularly on the museum websites, there were a lot of links which were images. Because it seems to me that on many websites, they're giving up on inline links, and they're just using navigation, whereas the whole point of the web originally was to make the links in the text, and that seems to be disappearing a bit. But in museum websites, I think it's very good that you're still getting that. So here's a page actually from the British Museum website that illustrates both approaches. You've got a rather complicated menu structure at the top of the page, I have to say, but then each of those images is a link, and there's text above the image to tell you what you can go and find out about in terms of the history of money at the British Museum. And we were interested that, again, there was a very significant difference here, a very strong pattern of this type that we weren't expecting, that both highly sequential and highly global people preferred the images in the page. The question was, you got a high score if you said you preferred images in a page, and a low score if you preferred the menu text at the top of the page. So we can see that both extremes prefer the images, and people who are balanced on global sequential really don't like that very much. They really prefer the text, the menu at the top of the page. So, I'm running out of time, so I will conclude. To be honest, we have just found this, we've just done this study, and we've got a great deal of information. There are many things we've asked about, and we've got the 4 dimensions to work through, so I'm not sure I've really come to a big conclusion about this, but certainly we think that this is an interesting approach that developers of websites, particularly museum websites, might be interested to think about in terms of designing both the information architecture and the navigational approach, as well as the content and on websites, in terms of people's learning styles, and of therefore trying to appeal to a range of different learning styles. We are working at the moment on a fuller report. The work is part of my PhD student Charla's work. She's just finished her PhD, and now we're writing a report for museum people that we hope will be interesting. So if you're interested to find out more, please contact me at the conference, or my email address is helen.petrie@york.ac.uk. Contact me via that email address. Thank you very much.